Welcome to VLGA Connect. My name is Catherine Arndt and I'm the Chief of the VLGA Connect studio. I hope you enjoy today's Connect episode brought to you by the VLGA, the national broadcaster on all things local government.
Hi, everyone, and welcome once again to VLGA Connect and the weekly governance update, which is brought to you by Hunt & Hunt Lawyers. And I'm delighted to have back with me in the co-hosting chair this week, Tony Raunic from Hunt & Hunt Lawyers. How you going, Tony?
Oh, always good to be here, Chris. But the mad Christmas rush is on, of course. But yeah, lovely to join you and talk local government once again.
And of course, as always, there's lots to talk about. And we do have a special guest coming on the program in just a little while that I'll tell you more about in just a moment. Any particular stories doing the rounds that have caught your eye this week, Tony?
Yes. Well, it's called councillor voting countbacks for councillor voting going on at the moment in a couple of municipalities. I think Moira is the countback central. I think there's been 4 countbacks of the Moira 2020 election so far, and the latest one in relation to Councillor Beitzel, who resigned recently. Congratulations to Scott Olsen of Coonamoo, which you know all about Coonamoo.
No, Coonamoo well, yes.
Council, yes.
Yes, spot on there, Tony. I watched that countback and I saw the number 4 up in the top corner, and that's when I realised, yes, this is the 4th countback, and we're not done because there'll be a 5th countback. I'm assuming, Tony, because it's unsubdivided, that the 5 candidates that were eligible for the countback conducted this week will now become 4 candidates for the countback that happens next week.
I think that's right. And it's interesting. I've seen a few pundits out there in local press indicating who they think might win and such. But yeah, really interesting results. And also Wodonga has had a similar exercise. And congratulations there go to Danny Chamberlain, who of course replaced the retiring John Watson, who, our thoughts go to John, his family. He's been quite unwell with cancer, I think. But what that does mean, that countback, is that it gives Wodonga Council an opportunity now to have another mayoral election and maybe break that 3-3 deadlock that arose earlier in the month.
Yes, you would hope that manages to break the deadlock, wouldn't you? They, I think they said they'll conduct that by around the 16th of January, but of course that doesn't mean they can't do it sooner if everything lines up. Now, we'll get to the latest on the state election as it relates to councillors in just a moment, but the new cabinet has been announced, and no change, I guess, is the headline in terms of the local government portfolio, Tony.
That's right. Melissa Horn continues on in that role. She's added another piece or two to her list of portfolios, received roads and road safety, which has got some real strong synergies, of course, with local government, to add to, I think, parks and freight and casinos, gaming.
Ports and freight, yes.
Yeah.
Ports, so you did, but that's all right. I think mostly what I've heard is people are quite pleased to hear that Melissa will stay in that portfolio and get a significant period of time perhaps to make a difference.
Yeah, it's that continuity, building those relationships in the sector, and I think that's what we all wanted.
One of the other portfolios that is directly relevant to local government, of course, is planning, and it's been widely reported that Lizzie Blanthorne has stepped out of that, and Sonia Kilkenny comes into that role. And another that has a bit to do with the sector is suburban development, and Ros Spence has picked up that portfolio in the new cabinet.
Congratulations to all of them.
So, Tony, we've been watching really closely, particularly Preston, to see the final wash-up, whether there might be another sitting councillor that gets elected. Alas, not to be for Gaetano Greco, who gave it a good show, but in the end didn't actually get into that second spot on preferences, which some were suggesting he might do.
He didn't, but I think Gaetano will be, congratulating himself and his team. I think I read somewhere that for the first time since 1945, Preston is now a marginal electorate, and got something like 14% of the first preference vote out there. Councillor Greco, of course, from Darebin City Council, second time around running. I think he joined the campaign late in the piece in 2018. But a number of councillors, of course, sitting councillors, have been elected this state election.
So by my count, Tony, we've got 8 potentially, depending what happens in the final wash-up of the upper house, but certainly 4 lower house. So Kim O'Keefe in Shepparton, Jade Benham in Mildura, Gabrielle de Vietri in Richmond, and Paul Mercurio down in Hastings on the Mornington Peninsula. So there's 4 lower house members that were sitting councillors. And then the upper house, I believe I read the 13th of December when they're expecting to actually press the button for the final count there. Based on the current estimates on the ABC website, we've got 4 councillors on track to be elected. And they're Joe McCracken in Western Victoria, Catherine Copsey in Southern Metro, and Moira Deeming and Trung Lu in Western Metro. So, of course, you know what that means, Tony. There's going to be 8 either countbacks or by-elections happening.
It just goes on, doesn't it? But isn't it awesome having that representation in the state parliament from people who understand how local government works and have that real direct experience there? And congratulations to all those 8. And, may there be many more from all the parties and independents as well that have run. I think it's a really positive thing for our sector.
Right, Tony, a little bit of controversy, surprisingly, out of Yarra. He says, with tongue in cheek, out of Yarra City Council this week. So the council was due to adopt its meeting schedule for 2023 at its council meeting this week. I understand that there was a motion from the floor to vary that meeting schedule, which means a reduction in the number of meetings. Another councillor has put in a rescission motion against that, and there's an extraordinary meeting happening Friday to deal with that rescission motion.
That's right. Councillor Stephen Jolly, I believe, has placed that notice of motion for a rescission motion to basically maintain the status quo in terms of the frequency of council meetings in 2023 to have the same frequency that it has occurred in 2022. And I gather there is he has some support amongst some of his colleagues, so that'll be an interesting one to watch. Friday, tomorrow, as we're recording this.
Yeah, so we're recording this on Thursday evening, and so by the time most people see this, it may have already happened, or might be about to. My understanding, Tony, is that the meeting this week went online because of illness with some of the councillors, and some weren't present. So the numbers, assuming they're back for the extraordinary meeting, could be different.
Yeah, watch that one with a bit of interest. Controversial one locally there.
Yes. Some news out of Merrybeck this week too, on 2 fronts, on the 26th of January front and on the CAT containment or curfew front. I know the latter one has been exercising your mind, Tony.
Yeah, well, I have been thinking about that. Being we do own a cat at home, but it's a conundrum for local councils. How do we deal with roaming cats? Of course, we know eat a lot of local wildlife and other wildlife about the place, and there's been a real differing approach to this. And reading the Age article yesterday, it talked about there are in fact 10 councils across the state who have 24-hour curfews for cats. I think Knox and Yarra Ranges were mentioned there. There's another 27 councils that have evening curfews. Port Phillip, Wyndham, Bayside were mentioned, and apparently there are 17 others that are considering some sort of cat containment policy. Well, Merrybeck's had a good think about this and decided that the best approach is an educational approach to, educate residents about the importance of containing your moggy, your cat, rather than go down that mandatory approach, which they mentioned tends to lead to a reduction in cat registrations, as some residents go, I'm not going to register my cat. I don't want the council to know I've got a cat, if there's this a mandatory containment provision, also tends to lead, I gather, to extra volume in terms of cats being dumped at shelters and such. And the problem, I think the problem is you can't teach an old cat new tricks. Your old cat, if you haven't raised your cat to be contained, it's a problem if there's a sudden change in the law there. So the educational piece is what Mary Beck are concentrating on.
Yes, educating owners, obviously. It's very difficult, as you say, to educate the cats. And I did facetiously say when this came up at another council that, the signage needs to be really good to let the cats know if you're doing a dusk to dawn curfew, for example. But they don't carry watches either. So anyway, that's just getting a bit silly. So we'll keep an eye on that, Tony, because as you say, it's been considered by a lot of councils. And of course, they're in the cycle of reviewing and adopting new domestic animal management plans, which in many cases is the trigger for these conversations happening now.
Absolutely. And of course, as you mentioned, the other big piece there out of Marybeck is that like quite a lot of councils now reconsidering, how do we do we have our citizenship ceremonies on January the 26th. It's a day that means different things to different people, and do we look at doing it on a day that's perhaps less divisive? It represents certainly for a large portion of the community a day of mourning. For others, it still has that connection to Australia, the first Europeans coming to Australia, or first settlers, if you want to put that.
Yes, yeah. I read the agenda paper for this from the Marybeck meeting this week, Tony, and I didn't see the meeting, but I did hear a media report this morning that suggested to me that adopted the recommendation, which was to discontinue having citizenship ceremonies on the 26th of January, starting from next month, but to have a day of mourning ceremony in its place, and to work towards an annual event to welcome new citizens and develop First Nations cultural knowledge. The report makes the really good point that there's been two other councils that have made that decision and have had their right to deliver citizenship ceremonies removed from them by the previous federal government. And we're yet to see what this new federal government may say or do about councils taking that action.
Yeah. Look. Hopefully, we have a bit of local democracy on this. I mean, I think it would be great to still have a positive day where we celebrate the positive things about Australia, whether that's January 26th or another day. I guess is something that the whole community will gravitate around. But it would be nice for the local communities to make some local decisions here.
Tony, let's take a little break. We've had this week an opinion piece come out from the Mayor of Glen Eira. I know you've seen it. I've read it very closely too. This is Jim Magee, who's called for a major shake-up of the local government sector in Victoria. I'm sensing you're ready for a cuppa. You might want to go and make a coffee or a cup of tea, and I'm going to bring in Jim Magee, and I did speak to him earlier, and I asked him, in his view, what actually needs to happen. Mayor Jim Magee from the city of Glen Eira has been on council for 4 terms now. This is the 4th term, and is just commencing his 3rd term as mayor. So firstly, Jim, congratulations.
Oh, Chris, thank you very much. It's such an honour and a pleasure to be the mayor of such a great city.
You've called for a shake-up of the local government sector in Victoria. What do you think needs to happen?
Chris, I think what needs to happen mostly is a really serious grown-ups conversation about everything from cost shifting to the services that we provide, to the conversations that state government have without involving local government that affect local government. And quite often with cost shifting, we see that we bear the brunt of that. And you'll see just in the last election, for instance, free kindergarten. The state government's talking about, what does free kindergarten mean? To me, it means another cost shift to Glen Eira. We have 10 centres. We're already getting inquiries from people about, want to enrol in free kindergarten. We don't have free kindergarten.
Yeah.
The government hasn't told us how they're going to fund this kindergarten, or do they mean free to them?
Yeah.
I just don't know. So I need this conversation to be had before we go down the road. As I said before, kicking the can down the road will only go for so long. Sooner or later, you've got to stop and pick up the bloody thing and put it in the bin. So the conversation has to be has to be had as to where are we headed, how are we getting there, and is it really sustainable for local government going into the future? Financial sustainability, I think, is the core of this. Ran my own business for 25 years. If I ran my business like local government runs, I would be asking questions about whether I'm insolvent or not.
Jim, you do say you're not talking about amalgamation. Why are you saying amalgamation shouldn't be part of the conversation?
No. Everything should be part of the conversation. Amalgamations are certainly, we haven't seen that since the Kennett days, some 30 years ago, when he did the last big reforms. And there are opportunities, and there certainly should not be not taken out of the question altogether. I've got 4 other councils directly around me, which are brilliant, great, well-run councils. But we've got 5 CEOs, 5 chief financial officers, 5 parks and gardens departments, 5 family and children's services. Why can't the city of Glen Eira do parks and gardens? The city of Bayside do maternal health. The city of Stonington, do roads and maintenance. And we combine and we sort of charge each other for the services. We have to look at other options going forward to, I think, for the sustainability of who we are. And we're talking 5 years, 10 years. We should be talking 40, 50 years. We've been here for a bloody long time. And if we don't have these conversations, we go year in, year out, and I see more and more problems with us at a local level, just in planning, for instance. The regulations that are put on our planners, it costs us about $600 to do a planning application because the government sets the fees. Those fees don't cover the application. And if it goes on to VCAT, we cop the complete cost of the VCAT because we have to prepare all the documents. So we're in a rate capping situation, as you well know, 1.75%. Inflation's running at nearly 7%, and by the end of the year could be hitting 8%. Our cost of operating, if I was running my business, it is costing me more to run the business than I'm actually able to retrieve. Now, only Victoria and New South Wales are capped. The rest of the country can actually have those conversations with their residents. I've got to go to the Essential Service Commission to, if I want to increase that. And these are all because of what's been put on top of us as from state government.
So you mentioned New South Wales. There's quite a bit of information coming out of New South Wales at the moment where they find themselves, many councils, in what they're calling a very dire state of financial potential unsustainability, and they're flagging some pretty drastic rate rise programs. Are you watching what's happening there, and are you concerned that perhaps
I am.
That's us just a bit further down the track?
Look, I am, and I'd hate to admit it, but they're probably 5 to 10 years ahead of us. So that means they're in a lot more trouble because no one had this conversation 10 years ago. Certainly. Look, we're about to hear about the new rate cap. I think it's due on the 13th. If that rate cap doesn't start with a 4, Victorian local government's in trouble. 4.25 or more, we've got a chance. Under that, we will continue to struggle. Absolutely continue to struggle. I'm absolutely sure of that.
As you're aware, I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit here, Jim. Many will remind us that we are a creature of the state. The state government is our master. They, they set the environment. How do we have that conversation when clearly it's electorally, or the government might say it's electorally unpopular to talk about increasing rates, etc.?
Look, and that's the government's fault. The government put out the story about rate capping, and all my neighbours would, if I said to them, rate capping's at 1.75%, they would say to me, great, my rates can only go up by a maximum of 1.75%. I got absolutely no understanding the rate cap is about our income. We can't increase rates by more than 1.75%. So therefore, their rates is controlled by the value of their property in relation to the value of all other properties around them. So unless everybody's property value goes up at the same rate, then that's the only way everyone will get 1.75%. But we can't afford ongoing to continue to pay for all the things that the government are putting onto us, like the crossing supervisors at our schools. We're supposed to be 50-50 share. We're not. We're paying 70%, government's paying 30%. You're talking about libraries, should be 50-50. The government's paying 22%. You've got just look at the waste levy, for instance. They've collected since 2019, I would say upwards of $700 million, Chris. Yet we're still having to pay for our stuff going to landfill. We're not seeing any of that money coming back from state government. State government at some point have got to say, you know what, it's not about us anymore. It's about all of us. And local government, we're the ones on the ground actually with the shovel. State government doesn't hold a shovel or a broom. They just dictate. And we're the ones out dealing with the community, building the infrastructure. We're responsible for some 3.8% of taxes. Yet we're responsible for something like more than 50, 60% of infrastructure maintenance. This is throughout Australia.
So, Tony, that's Jim Magee's view on wanting to start a serious conversation. He doesn't pull any punches.
He's thought-provoking, but I love Jim's approach, and it's something the sector's really grappling with, even more so now with all this inflation and capital works expense. So, yeah, great contribution from Jim.
I must say the conversation I had with him goes for a little bit longer yet. And what I'll do is I'll put that interview into the Local Government News Roundup podcast, hopefully on the Sunday edition, if anyone wants to hear the full chat. We do get into a few other areas of discussion as well. So thanks to Jim for being part of the governance update this week. A few other stories to whip through here, Tony, and get your thoughts on. Well, one, as of today, as we record this, the City of Port Phillip has announced its new CEO. Really pleasing to see Chris Carroll, who's been there in a general manager role and filling the position on an interim basis recently, announced as the new CEO of that municipality.
Yeah, great news on the eve of Christmas, really, that Chris has taken on that role in a permanent way, and someone who knows already a lot about the community of Port Phillip.
Absolutely. All right. Well done to Chris. I think there's 7 left now on my list of councils that have to make decisions about CEOs. I think Glen is getting close because I know the current CEO finishes in a couple of weeks there. The case out at Horsham, Tony, where a former councillor now, Di Bell, was referred to the inspectorate by the council over potential conflict of interests not being declared and misuse of position. It's been dropped by the inspectorate this week.
Yeah, that's right. So this, I think it related to an alleged conflict around the Australian Services Union. Councillor Di Bell resigned back in August 2022. I think the inspectorates announced that they won't be proceeding further. I think they have made, I think, a finding or two in relation to some matters in relation to a conflict of interest, but they've decided to take no further action, given I think it was the first time it had come to their attention, and the council has since resigned.
And I think the one that was found proven was by virtue of her remaining in the chamber when they were actually discussing the motion to refer it to the inspectorate.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's that one put to bed. Another article that caught my eye from The Guardian this week around the city of Melbourne looking to try and, or at least start to address gender imbalance in public art. We've got all these statues around the city, and Melbourne is looking to raise at least 3 new statues of women.
Yeah, awesome. Was any names mentioned at all, Chris, or maybe our viewers got some ideas?
In terms of who those statues could be of, Tony, do you mean? No, I didn't notice whether they'd actually said that. They've passed a motion to fast-track the erection of at least 3 new statues of significant Victorian women, but I didn't get down to the point of who they might be. There's some suggested names in the story. I don't want to say that they're definite in case that's just a pool of consideration at this point.
Oh, that's exciting. That's a really exciting one to watch, and look forward to seeing those go up.
And I know some people who'd be very happy to see that happening, because there's been campaigns to address that for some time. So we'll keep an eye on that one. You're looking at the Christmas tree in Port Macquarie this week, Tony, for some reason. I
did see one of the festive type story there. And look, Phil from Port Macquarie, there'd be a few councils and councillors out there thinking, oh, this has happened in my council, where councils, put up the festive decoration. In this case, it was the big Norfolk Island pine Christmas tree with the Christmas lights. The Mayor, Peter Pinson, has admitted that when she officially flicked the switch, turned the Christmas lights on, It was, she says, an oh my moment. A bit underwhelming, I gather.
Yeah.
The tree. It hadn't performed well in the poor weather, but it's been replaced now by an artificial tree that certainly we might put some photos up in the link. That
Yes.
certainly looks a bit less ragged. But the council are looking on the bright side here. I saw council spokespeople on Facebook saying, look, Christmas is back. If we can make everyone smile, give everyone a good laugh, we're doing, we're achieving something, and we've done that. And they also, they admitted that the tree looked a bit like it had been decorated by Santa, but after, one too many eggnogs.
It does, I have to say, it does look pretty sad looking at the pictures in the story, which has been published by the ABC this week, and it's been replaced by a smaller artificial tree.
Absolutely.
So there you go. You do your best to try and bring some Christmas cheer, and you end up being a viral social media event.
As they wouldn't be the first council where the Chamber of Commerce or the local, someone locally has come out and said, don't this year's decorations don't look very good.
Yes.
But with this difficult weather, I can imagine.
You can understand, can't you?
Yeah.
Now, what did you make of this situation at Brisbane, where one councillor has been called into question for repeatedly turning his back on another councillor in the chamber when she was speaking? They've both been reprimanded of a sort by the meeting chair in terms of councillor behaviour. But the wash up of all of this, in my view, Tony, was nobody comes out looking very good, and it's a bit embarrassing for the sector.
Absolutely. Look. Firstly, I thought even once, but let alone repeatedly, councillor seemingly making a deliberate gesture of turning their back on another councillor in the chamber while they're speaking. To me, that seems discourteous, infantile. I'm actually against regulating for politeness. I just think courteous behaviour, we don't regulate for it in the real world, do we? We'll be driving our car and someone won't let us in, or will give us the proverbial bird or toot their horn at us, and can't sort of run off to the regulator about that.
That's very true.
I just think I certainly think there's got to be high standards of behaviour, and we've got to enforce those. But in terms of these sort of petty incidents like this, I really think that very poor behaviour by one councillor, and maybe we've got to perhaps take the high moral ground and sometimes move ahead. But certainly, if I was a Brisbane ratepayer at the moment, I not necessarily would say I would have a high regard for what I'd heard about how my council meetings were being conducted at the moment.
Perhaps one redeeming feature here, or light at the end of the tunnel, however you want to put it, Tony, is that since this came to light, was exposed by the ABC, etc., I understand that the behaviour, particularly the turning of the chair behaviour, hasn't occurred since, which is good to hear.
That is good to hear. As I say, don't condone that sort of behaviour or any level of discourtesy towards other councillors or people. But it's certainly it's just stolen the limelight, really, from no doubt some really great stories might have come out of Brisbane.
Very true. Not a good look at all. Perhaps one more before I let you go with your legal eye. We're going to Puerto Rico, which is a territory of the USA, as you may know. Have you been to Puerto Rico?
I have not been to Puerto Rico, which is rich port in Spanish.
Yes, I must say I have been. I've been to San Juan, left on a cruise from the port of San Juan many years ago. It's sad, though, to think what that whole island looks like now, because it was devastated, really, in the 2017 hurricanes. And the municipalities across Puerto Rico have brought a class action lawsuit against the fossil fuel industry. Basically, Tony, what they're suggesting is that the behaviour of the fossil fuel companies over many years in denying climate change and contributing to it, allegedly, has actually fed into the devastating results of these hurricanes.
Absolutely. It's against, companies like, Shell and Chevron, Exxon Mobil, that sort of stuff. And of course, you understand, as you say, you mentioned those hurricanes, Irma, Maria, we all remember the devastating footage. But yeah, allegation that there's basically been a deliberate attempt to defraud consumers by concealing, the climate consequences of burning fossil fuels, using the racketeering laws, the anti-racketeering laws, RICO, as some of us would know in the States. They've actually been used in the past successfully against tobacco companies. So there is some precedent there. And so far be it for me to predict the outcome of US class actions, plaintiff-driven class actions, but really interesting approach being taken here.
So my question, Tony, and you might not be able to answer this, given the devastating floods that we've had across Australia in the last couple of years, could this potentially plant a seed for other parts of the world to start taking that sort of action, even if, you don't think fossil fuels and floods, but the argument seems to be they've contributed to climate change, which has resulted in these extreme weather events?
Yeah, look, and so to establish these types of offences in Australia, you've got to have to show causation, so cause and effect, and whilst there's probably no doubt for the vast majority of us who believe in climate change that there is an effect from the burning of fossil fuels, it does accelerate the climate change impacts, but to what degree? And can we immediately can we sheet home blame for a particular incident, like a flooding incident or some other natural disaster? My preference would probably be that we take a community-wide approach to this, but remains to be seen. I'm not aware of any similar sort of action being successful in Australia today.
All right, one to watch with great interest. Tony, I think that's probably enough for today. We did have a big, long list of stories. There's never any shortage of local government-related stuff to talk about, but we've got to draw the line somewhere. And I know your time is valuable, so thank you as always for your insights on the governance update.
Always a pleasure, Chris, and love joining you. And I'll be back watching next week. Is it your last? Is it your last?
I think next week will be the last one for the year. Yes. So we need to cook up something special.
Awesome. I'll be looking forward to that.
Think about that. Thank you, Tony. Tony Raunic from Hunt & Hunt Lawyers, our terrific sponsors and my guest host here on the program today. And thanks again to Jim Magee from the city of Glen Eira for joining us as well. I hope you've enjoyed the program and got some value from it. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your podcast player or subscribe right here on the YouTube channel to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Bye for now.